Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Edith Devaney. I'm a curator at the Royal Academy of Arts in London, where we have just opened an exhibition of Tracey Emin, Edvard Munch. And we've worked in very close collaboration with the Munch Museum. And I want to introduce my colleague, Kari, who will just talk about her role there.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm a curator at the Munch Museum, and we started to develop this concept for the exhibition The Loneliness of the Soul with Tracey Emin and Edvard Munch actually 3 years ago. So it has been quite a long time before we know, after all these obstacles on the way, open the show at the Royal Academy of Arts. And so I'm so happy for this collaboration, Edith.
Yes, no, it's been a wonderful collaboration, and I think we've both enjoyed getting to know Tracey better. And in fact, I should mention that Tracey Emin is one of our Royal Academicians. The Academy has got 80 academicians who are elected to effectively run the Academy. And Tracey was elected a number of years ago and has actually been a very active member. So it's wonderful for us to be doing this exhibition with her and to work closely with you. But I must credit Kari as being the originator of the idea of the exhibition. And Kari, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about how you arrived at it. You've known Tracey's work for a number of years, is that correct?
Yes, for quite a number of years, actually, 23 years.
Goodness.
I was actually in 1997, I was living in Glasgow, and I was doing a research project on the art scene in Glasgow and compared it with what was going on in London at the same time. And you had the Glasgow School of Art, and you had this phenomenon called the Young British Artist in London with Tracey Emin. And she popped up in all the newspapers, art magazines, and I became so intrigued by her art and this self-confession and how she connected her past experiences from childhood and to being a young female, an artist, and managed to elaborate this in her art. So in May 1997, I took the night bus into London to see her first solo exhibition called I Need Art as I Need God at the South London Gallery. And it was such a great experience. And already at that time, I felt something familiar with her art. It was something with expressionism and with some references to a kind of Nordic melancholy, and also to Munch and the Scream. So then I wrote my first article. I got published in a Norwegian newspaper, and it was called Tracey Emin on a tight line between art and life. And that is often what it is about, especially also in her art these days, today. And I also then mentioned Edvard Munch. And when I got this position as a curator at the Munch Museum 5 years ago, I was asked what kind of a dream project would you like to do? And then it was, of course, with a show with Tracey Emin and with a link to Edvard Munch. And when I first met Tracey then back like 4 years ago, she was just very, very obsessed also by this idea, because as she said Edvard Munch is my friend in art, and she fell in love with his art already when she was like 18 years old. So this expressionism or the emotionalism she is referring to when she talks about Munch has been important for her to have this courage to create the art she does, and that's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful kind of journey about, you know, describing how the exhibition came about. And one of the things that struck me with Tracey was that, you know, you're absolutely right. She talks about discovering Edvard Munch when she was 18 and she was still living in Margate. I don't think she'd ever been to an exhibition. She'd never been to a museum. And she discovered his work through print. She got library books out because she discovered Egon Schiele remarkably through a David Bowie album cover, and understood that he had based his pose on a Schiele work, and through Schiele she found out about Munch, and instantly through looking at those images of Munch's work, not understanding what size they were, what the kind of material nature was of them, she realized that she'd found a friend in art, a kindred spirit. And I think that must have given her courage as a young burgeoning artist to follow her own instinct, which was very much kind of against the wave of where art was going in the 1980s and early 90s, you know, this idea about self-examination, expressionism. But she kind of held steadfast to it. And it sort of, in a way, and it's described in your essay in the catalogue and in the conversation I have with her, it's been a kind of love affair with Munch. And I don't think there's ever been a point where he hasn't been a sort of touchstone for her throughout the development of her career. Would you agree, Kari?
Yes, absolutely, I agree. And it's also so interesting how she, like Edvard Munch, she takes, what should I say, she is digging into some special events from her childhood and from her family, like Munch also is doing. So she is repeating this and developing this in different kind of medias, in different kind of situations. And this is also and these incidents, they are very related to her special experiences, but they're also something we as an audience can relate to very much. And that is also the importance for Edvard Munch's art, his kind of experiences from his childhood, his sorrows, his griefs, his obsessions with different kind of, what should I say, women, or
doomed love affairs.
Love affairs is something that we all can relate to, even it's very, very coming from a very subjective, what should I say, creating this material from a...
Yes. Yeah, no, there's an absolute universality to how both of them work on the canvas, that it's something that relates to us all. I wanted to ask you about the before we get on to the kind of the exact subject of the exhibition and the selection of work, the experience of I just love this idea of Tracey coming to Oslo, and she'd been before. We know that she went in the late 90s, and she was actually basing some of her work on Edvard Munch and referencing him in her work very early on in her career. And there's that wonderful video that we're not showing at the Academy, but you're going to show, and is currently in show in White Cube in London. And I saw it last night with her on the jetty in Oslo and screaming. So it's a kind of fantastic piece, and even though it was made sort of 2 decades ago, it still has got this kind of immediacy. But I love this idea of you bringing Tracey into the vast storage areas where you keep all of the Munch paintings in the museum, and how she went about, how she responded emotionally to that experience. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. No, you know, when we started up the work and she came first to Oslo, it was like she was very excited, and me, of course, as well. And we were discussing what kind of concept. And I came up with this idea I had, that I wanted to focus on, what should I say, more how to the aging process, loneliness, and getting older, because to do it to have a kind of more focused concept, and also about sexuality. That is a kind of very important issue both for Tracey Emin and Edvard Munch, and she was not so eager. I wanted to have more kind of her earlier works in the show, but and then we agreed on to have some works that relate to her special kind of passion and for Edvard Munch and the importance Munch has played in her early art, as the film you mentioned, Homage to Edvard Munch and All My Dead Children, that she did in Oskarstrand in 1998, when she was going there with British TV, Channel 4, to do a film on her art. And we went down also to Oskarstrand again, and that was May 2018. And it was so funny to see how Tracey went into this small little cabin Munch bought that in 1898, actually, 100 years before Emin, she did the film Homage to Edvard Munch. And because it was so important for Tracey in this process to really get near Edvard Munch and to experience how he was living, how if she had a car, if he had a telephone, what he ate, how his garden was like. So we went to Oskarstrand, and we also went to his studio in the outskirts of the center of Oslo called Ekeli, where he was living the last 25 years of 30 years of his life. And then we started to dig into the archives of the Munch Museum, and it's 1,200 paintings, and it's a lot of paperworks, and there are also few sculptures, and it was so fun because like Tracey, she felt the spirit of Edvard Munch, and how near he in a way was in the process of developing this exhibition, and how she also selected the works by Edvard Munch. And when we were looking around in the small archive we have for his private objects, and there is the old hats Munch were wearing, and it is his paintbrushes and his chairs, and a lot of interesting things. And she was like, it was like his what should I say, his hats started to move around, and no, it was such a special atmosphere. Even for me, it was something really out of what do you call it? Out of reality, or
yeah. This kind of strange and unexplained connection that was set up.
It was so intense, and I love the intensity of Tracey when she is going into a sort of material, and I suppose that energy gives this exhibition a special kind of atmosphere. What do you say? Atmosphere, or the audience will feel it.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's her sensibility is very much behind this, and kind of she's been guided through, but it's the choice of words are very much hers, and I think you hit on an interesting point. I mean, and she selected all of the works by Edvard Munch, which we can talk about a little bit later, but Tracey's own work, she selected herself, and you're right. I mean, she really has wanted to concentrate, apart from a few early works, and you will have more than we've got at the Academy, but she's wanted to concentrate on recent works. But the thing that is interesting is that actually most of the Munch works in the exhibition are kind of mid-career works from Munch. And the same is true for Tracey.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of union. And I don't know if she meant it. I think that it was always instinctive that she wanted to concentrate on the more recent paintings.
No, I suppose it was kind of instinctive, because that was something we didn't talk about, because that was also something I recognized when the selection was made. And it's only one painting, a very important painting in the show. It's a woman in hospital, and that's from, what should I say, Munch's, what should I say, blue period, or the more symbolistic part of his paintings from 1897, which he made in Paris. And that's, you see this aging old woman, the illness and the kind of fear and loneliness. And I suppose when it comes to what has happened the last years, it's been it's a strong work in this exhibition. And also another show, also another painting I find very important in the context of the, what should I say, the concept for this exhibition is Sitting Nude Morning, with this aging woman trying to going up from the bed. Yeah. And it's and also in the watercolors you see another, what should I say, interpretation of the same situation Munch did with this seated female nude morning. Also this older woman on the bed. And Tracey said, "Oh, these are really ugly."
I remember that.
And there are something, but it is also these sensitivities and how Munch managed to catch this kind of the aging female body, so how you are all the memories with the heaviness.
Yes.
How do you call
it? It's kind of it's the increasing burden of life that's kind of displayed in them, and it's this accumulation. And the whole aging thing is a fascinating idea, you know, because Tracey's very conscious now because she's gone through a really difficult illness, and I think anything like that is reminds us of our mortality, and something that's completely not lost in her. But when I was talking to her before, actually, she became ill, and talking to her for the catalogue, she talked about how she does her pictures of you know the women in her pictures, which we know are always a kind of manifestation of her. And she said, you know, I still paint myself as someone who's kind of youthful and slender, and I need to work that out because I'm heavier now. I'm sort of more showing my middle age, and I need to represent that in the painting. So she's aware of that. But one of the very interesting conversations that I know you've had with her, and I've had as well, is her interpretation of Munch's attitude towards women as seen through his painting. I mean, as you articulated earlier, Kari, he had, you know, these very difficult family situations with his mother dying early, his sister dying, these torrid and difficult love affairs that just were kind of torturous. It was just sort of full-on drama. But when he paints women, as Tracey points out, it's very respectful. And the painting that you mentioned, The Women in Hospital, which is the only early work by Munch in the exhibition, is in such an extraordinary work because it's, as you say, it's showing women in extremis, you know, in a situation where they're half dressed, where they're obviously their minds are in a terrible state. But Munch represents them without any mawkishness, without over emoting. It doesn't evoke pity. It's just how it is. And it's utterly sympathetic. And when you kind of look at that image and think, how did he achieve that balance of being so objective and so respectful? It's kind of remarkable. Do you agree?
I agree, absolutely. And, you know, there have been a lot of myths around Munch's relation to women, that he was misogynist, that he, you know, the early works, the vampire, that the man is eaten by women, and And of course, he was raised in a time where it happened a lot when it comes to women's liberation. And Norway got the vote rights for women in 1913, and it was quite early compared to Britain. Maybe when did you get it in Britain? The female right.
I can't remember. Testing my school history here.
Yeah, but however, he was surrounded by really strong women in his time. By Oda Krog, who was connected to the Christiania Bohème. She wanted to choose her own lovers, and also Dagny Juel, who was married to Przybyszewski, his Polish friend, who wrote one of the first texts on Edvard Munch in the 90s. And Eva Mudocci, he also had a relation to, and Tulla Larsen, who he was nearly married to. She was also a very strong female figure. And, you know, Edvard Munch was also raised by his aunt Karen, and she was a strong supporting woman in his life. And he had 3 sisters he respected very much, especially his sister Inger, who survived him. So I suppose he was surrounded by many strong female figures, and he respected them, and that's why he also managed to represent them with such a sensitivity on in the watercolors, all the nudes Tracey selected, and also in these in his nude paintings as this. That's, I suppose that's a new. We have to look at Edvard Munch's relation to women in a new way, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this exhibition does that, you know, because you're putting him with someone like Tracey, who is so much known for her depiction of the idea of the woman, and it makes us look at Munch afresh. And of course, that's the wonderful thing about doing an exhibition where you're recontextualizing the work of a modern master with a contemporary artist. It brings a kind of a fresh insight into both artists. And what was interesting when the critics came in to see the exhibition and comment on it, I mean, some of them had said to me before going in, well, it's a strange thing, really, to put Tracey Emin with Edvard Munch. Right. When they came out, they said, we completely understand it. It's really wonderful. And I think as well, I mean, one of the things that Tracey is very interested in, and I know that you find this kind of preparing for the exhibition next year in Oslo, is that she's very interested in how the exhibition flows. And I think that people were anticipating before seeing the exhibition that it would be a kind of direct comparison. So you'd have one work by Munch next to a work by Tracey, and looking at the similarities and differences. And it's absolutely not that. No. It's this kind of organic arrangement. And there's moments when you're, you know, when people are not looking at the labels, which we've really played down, where they're not quite sure, you know, is that a watercolor by Munch or is it by Tracey Emin? Because there's moments when they're almost interchangeable. So they've kind of the thing that holds it all together is they've captured exactly the same spirit, and I think that's one of the kind of wonderful points of the exhibition. And you know, the theme of the exhibition is interesting. It's about women aging, it's about grief, and it's about loss, and it's about, you know, so anyone going might anticipate that they'd come out the other end feeling deeply, deeply depressed, but strangely, it's incredibly uplifting.
Yeah.
And you know, I wondered what you thought about that, and is that something that you had sort of anticipated it would be?
Yeah. What do you say when you are going through a kind of, unfortunately I can't find the English words always, but it's a kind of, you know, it's, you are going through the hell, and it's like, you know, the 3 stage to Dante. It's a kind of
it's that sort of a journey of depression, you know, and it's
but you are coming through it in a relieved or like a comforting way of what you I can't find the word.
Yeah, it's cathartic. I mean, it's that idea of the catharsis. Yeah,
catharsis. Yes, and that's and in the Munch Museum, when the exhibition will open there, unfortunately, it was not. It should have opened in Oslo this summer, but due to the COVID-19 and delays in the building project for the new Munch Museum, it happens that you got the exhibition first. So lucky you.
Thank you.
And hopefully it, so it will open in June next year in Oslo. And, you know, on the road, when we spoke about Munch and we had this conversation with Tracey, she also did some paintings that more or less come out of this process. And one of these is this, which is the cover on the publication. Yeah. It's called I Am the Last of My Kind. And this painting I find really interesting. When I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh yes, this is like, it's iconic already. I think it has something, it tells so much about, also about, what should I say, this exhibition is about aging, loneliness, sexuality, and you are, what we said earlier, the burden of life and memories coming back. And so this, I saw you have mounted it. It's installed in the exhibition at the Royal Academy in a slightly different context than it will be in Oslo. It's kind of installed near to he came, the other painting.
Yeah.
So and I am a bit interested to hear how did when you had to rework all the selected works, it had to be in a way planned in another way, since it's another kind of space at the Royal Academy. How have you worked on the installation plan? How was it?
Yeah, I think that the installation was really interesting because at one stage we were looking at following particular themes in the way that you had been considering at one time, because Kari and I, we've had a series of meetings over a period of time when you know you've been developing ideas in the exhibition, we've been kind of responding to them. So we thought, well, do we do kind of, you know, one room that looks at loss and one that looks at longing, and that didn't really hold together, and the pictures became more important than the themes they represented in a certain way. And it was this kind of playing round we made a model and just kind of played around with all of the different images to see what worked. And I think the last gallery is really extraordinary because there are some kind of wonderful works by Tracey and both Tracey and Munch, and it's the sort of culmination, and The Last of My Kind is in that space. Mm-hmm. And it's got a kind of very, I mean, it's in terms of what the painting looks like and compared to some of the others, it's got a quietness to it. It's a dominating work, but you know, the color isn't as strong. There is this kind of subliminal message that you get in the wording behind, which feels as if it references Munch, because that's something he used to do in his works on paper a lot. So it looks kind of remarkable in that space. And the other Munch work in that space, which is really strong, is The Death of Marat, which is one of his, you know, masterpieces. It's just the most extraordinary painting. And if you wanted to come to the exhibition either here or in Oslo next year to see one work, that's just it's worth the visit. And that alone, you see a lot more fantastic work besides, but it's just such a remarkable piece. And it's the complexity of the thinking and the emotional engagement that work shows by Munch and that Tracey's work shows that sort of kind of is that culmination of the exhibition. And I think that's why ultimately in the end it's a highlight. You leave in this high because it's like, yes, you can get to a state where life seems to overburden you, but actually when you look at the richness of the emotional landscape that each of us has at our disposal, it's uplifting in a way. And that's really wonderful. I just wanted to mention one other thing, Kari, which is one of the kind of artistic skills that I think really unites Tracey and Munch, and that's their ability in draftsmanship. We know from Munch's drawings and printmaking that he was just the most unbelievably skilled draftsman. And drawing is something that's been close to Tracey's heart since she was a young student. And I find it really extraordinary for Tracey, who just has broken every kind of norm and boundary, for her to be so old-fashioned in her attitude towards drawing. I mean, she's almost like, she's almost like Munch's generation in her students must learn to draw. There must be live drawing classes. She's taught them herself, and she was professor of drawing at the Royal Academy of Arts for a few years. And when you see in the exhibition that group, which you group them all together, of Munch's watercolors, next to there's a wonderful, very, very kind of large but just slightly sketchy oil of Tracey's, which is called You Were Here Like the Ground Underneath My Feet, and that's next to it. So it really shows her graphic skill, and I think that's a lovely comparison. And it drawing really is fundamental to how she paints.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's something with the line, how it's the fragility, and also the emotional, how it is getting to live on the canvas, both in Munch's and Emin's paintings. That is, I really, really look forward seeing this show happening also in Oslo. But I will definitely come to London and see it.
I can't wait for you to see it in London, Kari. And I know you would have been here this week if it was possible to travel. And I too am immensely excited about seeing it in Oslo, because it will be bigger. You'll be in your new building. You're showing some incredible works by Tracey that we weren't able to fit in ours. So it'll be a sort of very expanded and even more brilliant version of what we've been able to do in London. So I really look forward to that, and I wish you every luck with delivering it.
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing on this way to make this exhibition real. One very important person as well is Harry Weller.
Oh.
Yes, he's Tracey's. What should I say, director or
he's Tracey's everything. He's everything. He
friend and
he makes sure she paints. He literally puts the paintbrush in her hand. He organizes everything. He's one of these people without whom it wouldn't happen. And Kari and I've got to know Harry and depend on him so much.
Yeah. I mean, I want to steal him to Oslo, but no, he has been so really helpful. And also when we started up this exhibition, I also went to Tracey Emin's studio in London and went to select works by Tracey in the show, and we were working in this all her archives and did this selection, and Tracey came and so it was this really intense process. And so Harry has been a very important, what should I say, figure in this, for realizing this show for you and me, Edith. So we have to.
He most certainly has, and I think we both take every opportunity to thank him. So thank you for mentioning it. I think that our time is nearly up, Kari, and I want to thank you for your time, and I also want to thank Viking for their incredible support of this exhibition. I mean, we do rely on sponsors and help to be as ambitious as we are. And every museum, the Royal Academy, the Munch Museum, we all depend on your generosity. So we hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much.
It was so nice to talk with you, Edith, and good luck with everything. And thank you, Viking.
you.